My name is Glenn Caroline. I serve as the Director of External Affairs for the Second Amendment Foundation. And tonight I'm really pleased that I was asked to join Richard Pearson and the team at the Illinois State Rifle Association on this Zoom call. We're not going to keep you for more than 45 minutes to an hour tonight, but we wanted to get together in these most critical times to talk a little bit about litigation, legislation, and some of the steps we need all of you to take to become better activists in defense of our Second Amendment rights. I'm just going to mention a few things at the outset, and then I'm going to turn it over to Richard Pearson, the Executive Director of the Illinois State Rifle Association. And he in turn will talk about legislation with some of his colleagues and litigation. Let me just do a few logistical comments first. For those of you who wish to ask a question tonight, if you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A feature. If you just click that, you can submit a question throughout the night while I'm listening to our panelists. I'll be scrolling through the questions, and we'll either answer them in turn as they come in, or toward the end of the webinar, we'll go through some of the more relevant questions to give you an opportunity to get your questions answered. If you wish to chat separately among yourselves, there's a chat feature where you can send chats to the entire group, people that you may know, or not chat at all. But I would ask, just for simplicity and to streamline the meeting tonight, if you please use the Q&A feature for its intended purposes, which is the question and answer. So before I kick it over to Richard, who I've known for probably 20, 25 years right now, hopefully all of you on the call tonight are ISRA members, which is great. If you're not, I would strongly encourage you to join. If you know others who ought to be ISRA members but aren't members, please share with them the value of joining so that we can speak with a larger voice in the state of Illinois, advocating on behalf of our Second Amendment rights. Make sure you're following them on any social media sites. You're signed up for their email alerts. You're attending all their rallies, events, and meetings.
All right, thanks.
And of course, now as legislation that we're going to be talking about just a minute is moving through the state capitol, it's critically important that all of you participate in the process by making your voices heard. Remember, our lawmakers work for us. We don't work for them. So they need to hear how we feel on gun-related bills. The final ask I'm going to make before I turn it over to the executive director is to ask each of you to become a force multiplier in the coming weeks. And by that, I mean to help us grow our network of activists in the state of Illinois by speaking to your family, contacting your friends and family members, fellow firearm owners, and making sure that they too are aware of the threats and opportunities that our gun rights face, and make sure they're taking the corresponding steps to become better activists to defend the Second Amendment. So again, I welcome the 267 people who've currently joined us now. And with that, I'm going to put my microphone on mute and introduce Richard Pearson, the Executive Director of ISRA. Richard.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm glad that you're here. We're very pleased to have Glenn Caroline, who's our moderator tonight. He's been very experienced with the NRA in the past, and so we've attended about 2 million meetings together, something like that. And so with me tonight is Bill Potts. He is a lobbyist for the ISRA, and also Ed Sullivan, a lobbyist for the ISRA. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. This is our very first webinar. And in these times, it's hard to get together. You know, we used to go around the state and put on meetings around the state, but we can't have meetings anymore. So we decided we would try the webinar using Zoom. It's not my first choice, but it's our only choice at the moment. So that's what we're going to do. We're always going to find a way to overcome and go ahead. So I'll talk about litigation here in the beginning. In 2006, after years of struggling, trying to get legislation through the state legislature and getting really nowhere, we were pretty good at defending bad bills, but we couldn't get any positive bills passed. The Illinois State Rifle Association decided that they would go into courts and start litigating for our Second Amendment rights. And of course, we still do that. I'm going to go through a few of those. Of course, we became involved a little bit in the Heller case in Washington, D.C., and that became very, very important to us. And right after that, we developed the McDonald case. And Illinois at the time was the only state that did not allow concealed carry or allow open carry. So you couldn't carry in any way to defend yourself. So that became the part of the basis for the case. And I was on the team with a lawyer by the name of Vic Quilty, who did a marvelous job, but he has left us now and gone to his reward. But we interviewed 54 possible plaintiffs, and we wound up with the 4 that we felt that were qualified. One of those was Otis McDonald, of course, and the case became known as McDonald versus the City of Chicago. And we went through the court system, and when you go through the court system in Illinois, the first couple rounds, you're either going to get defeated or have a tie or something. So you can't be discouraged by that. But eventually we made it to the United States Supreme Court, and they ruled in our favor. Along the way, we picked up the Second Amendment Foundation, which helped us tremendously. And in the end, the NRA came in. And so it said that, the state of Illinois has to do something, but they didn't define exactly what they had to do, or what we had to do. So we had to develop the bill, and Ed Sullivan was extremely influential in that process. And so, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you for a moment there. Do you want to talk about the development of the concealed carry bill? Oh, no, Ed. Well, anyway.
No,
So there we are. I can't hear you, Ed.
I was trying to unmute, but then I got muted again. So I was working on that.
All right.
They have an automatic mute, I guess, from the host site. So my background is one that I was a legislator for 14 years, from 2002 to 2016, and was the lead House Republican on the concealed carry bill. Really, when the Seventh Circuit Court came down and said, you must come up with a way to grant rights to concealed carry within the state of Illinois, that forced the hand of the anti-gunners within the General Assembly, and they had a choice. They could either work with us to try and come up with a comprehensive concealed carry act and allow, we were the last state in the union to have concealed carry, or they could go what's called the proverbial cliff. If we did not do something, the unknown on what the Seventh Circuit Court would do was really what forced the hand. The Seventh Circuit Court could have said, well, we're going to, in essence, take all UUW laws and wipe them off the books. They could have forced some type of legislation. And so I think we had a pretty good back and forth. Some of the things that we received, aside from concealed carry, we did get preemption. And so we didn't have that before. We now have preemption across the state, with the state being the preeminent governmental body that controls gun laws. We also got registration of handguns in Cook County. So that was another good thing that we got wiped off the books in those negotiations. Now, what did we give up? People always want to know. So one of the big asks by the President Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, who's in those meetings, was that his request was the city of Chicago to have their assault weapons ban. And so some people might say it's not worth it. At that time, we in the legislature thought it was worth it to give the city of Chicago their assault weapons ban for concealed carry, for registrations off, and for what I said before. Losing my train of thought. So that's how it took place. Ultimately, the Governor Quinn, who was a supreme anti-gunner, vetoed the legislation. We came back and overrode him, and we now have the law of the land. At that point, there was a discussion in the General Assembly to kind of sit back and not do any changes for 2 years. Those 2 years have come and gone, and certainly, anybody can change things. We certainly would like to see prohibitive places change. I live up in the northern suburbs. I'd like to see mass transit changed. I'd like to be able to hunt with my concealed carry, because none of us hunt with our carry gun on us. So that's kind of, hopefully that's what you're looking for, Richard. That's kind of a little background on what took place.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good.
All right. That is in essence what happened. There were 2 things that we wouldn't give up. One of those was we wouldn't leave anybody behind. So we insisted that the people in Chicago be able to get concealed carry if they passed the background check, took the class, all that kind of business. And so that was really important. The other issue was that we wanted shall issue. There are a lot of states that have may issue, and may issue means you're a friend of the mayor and you might get a concealed carry permit. But it becomes a political football, and we didn't want any Illinois citizen to have to go through that. We felt that it was important that we do that, and we did do that. We did get that done, and right now I think we have right around 37,000 concealed carry permits, with a lot more pending and a lot more people taking classes. So that became the basis, though. That victory became the basis for the litigation. And we've had a lot of it. And I said, why do you have to have so much litigation? Well, one of the reasons is that you have to take one point of the law at a time and test it. And you can't just say everybody gets everything all the time. It sounds good, but doesn't work. So we've had Culp versus Raoul, which is a non-resident concealed carry case that went to the Supreme Court and was turned down last year, along with all the other cases that were headed to the Supreme Court. We've had BBF Firearms versus Raoul, which is a dealer licensing case, and that still exists. The state has filed to dismiss the case, but we're not going to do that. We have Thompson versus the state police, which is the appeal of denial of void cards or revocation. And that has been filed, and the state police haven't responded yet. We have White versus the Illinois State Police. Mr. White lives in a bad neighborhood in Chicago, but is a perfect citizen. And he is being kind of redlined out of a concealed carry permit. And we are a civil rights organization, and we think that he has the right to defend himself like everyone else does. And so we're carrying that case forward. Miller and ISRA versus Roe, that was a case that they were trying to take Second Amendment rights and concealed carry permit rights away from people who had daycare centers. Then, of course, we have Easterdale versus the village of Deerfield. That was another case that we carried forward, and it went to the Supreme Court, and it was one of those cases turned down. So across the nation, last spring, there were 10 cases turned down by the United States Supreme Court, and we had 2 of them. Some of the cases there had taken the next case, Wilson versus Cook County. That's an assault weapons case, so-called assault weapons case. And so we believe that those people are law-abiding citizens. There's no reason why they can't have a firearm that holds more than 10 rounds and a semi-automatic firearm if they're good citizens. And that case was also turned down. And to give you an idea how long it takes, we worked on that case for 13 years. And it fell apart at the end. And all of these cases, have quite a bit of problems with them. The last is Brown versus the state of Illinois, and that is a Vivian Brown, a lady who was a disabled woman who had a single-shot rifle to defend herself, but no FOID card, and was turned in for it. And in that case, the White County Circuit Judge ruled the FOID card unconstitutional. And we've been trying to carry that case forward, but there's some difficulties with the case and the original pleadings and that sort of thing. So that is where that stands now. So now we are with Robinson versus Kelly. That is the Illinois State Police. And so that case is live. They had a reply from the state police on last Friday. They want a reply from us. So, I know you all want to hear the latest and greatest stuff, but a lot of this court case kind of business is kind of like watching paint dry. It takes a long time. You have to be patient. It's boring, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. So my portion here, I'm going to get the hook here in a minute. So I'm going to ask Bill Potts to talk about some legislation. So Bill, if you'll do that, that would be good.
Thanks, Richard. So I hope everyone understands how this legislation works. We don't have time to go through legislation 101, but we've just entered the 102nd General Assembly last Wednesday. And what does that mean to us? It means that all the previous bills that we fought, that you called on, that you called your legislators on, they went away. They disappeared. But also what that means is they're going to come after us with new things. You know, we had talked to long and hard about 1966. 1966 is gone and it's dead. But I am sure some form, some way, somehow, that will come back and revisit us. But one thing I want to touch on is on our website. When you look at our website, all the bills that we track, we log in there for you that are Second Amendment, whether we oppose them, whether we support them, or currently there's 5 bills there now. We're monitoring them. Bills are just starting to come out. There's only probably 300 bills right now that have been released. We've got to review each one of those. But if you look on the website and go under advocacy, and right to the right of advocacy, you'll see a number 2 if you press that. And then you're going to see a drop down and it'll be under legislation. And if you press that, if you're on a computer at home, it'll be horizontally and it'll list what we oppose, what we support, and what we monitor. If you're on your phone, it'll be vertically and you'll have to scroll down. It's a little tougher to see it on a phone, but it can be done. Those bills that are put up there live time. Soon as we read them, soon as we review them, we post them up there. Currently, there's the 5 bills that are up there that are related to everything we're talking about. They will sit there under that column to be monitored because they haven't been assigned to a committee yet. And once they are assigned to a committee, we'll move forward and look at them, talk with the sponsors. Like I said, we've only been 2 days into this session. We'll all be heading down there Monday, bright and early Tuesday morning. I'm sure there's going to be some more bills coming our way. We'll keep you informed as best as possible. We're going to try to do these Zoom calls. Maybe we can do one of these calls while we're down there because these are long weeks and we're going to be going up until June 1st. We don't know what's ahead of us, but they're always coming after us. We've got to work with our friends. We've got to work with the other Second Amendment groups. We've got to stay together. It's the old saying, you know, I've said this before in some of the presentations that I've given. It's like a beehive. You can swat the bee at the picnic, but you don't dare jump up on the table and swat the whole hive. And that's going to be key for us, is staying together as one group. So Richard, right now, that's what we have to report on. As luck has it, we're starting over, starting fresh. We have nothing coming after us, but I am sure, and I know we're all waiting, it's going to come, and we'll defend it the best we can and protect our Second Amendment rights for ourselves, our kids, our grandkids. The next one that we're going to have a whole lot more to report. I just know it. So I hope that covers everything. And if anybody has any questions, like, send them in and we'll get back to you. But the biggest thing is stay in contact with your legislator, your state senator and your state rep. Let them get to know your name. Don't go in there and upset them. Just go in there and meet them as a citizen. Let's be honest. Heck, it wasn't too long ago they wanted your vote. We certainly don't want them to come after our throats now.
Richard, real quick, while we're in between discussion points, why don't you just let the audience assembled know if they have questions or need more information from ISRA after this webinar? What is the best way they can get in touch with you to ask questions or to continue the dialogue?
Okay. One of the things that we have is ISRA notices. It is ISRA notices at isra.org. And those questions go to ISRA notices and we will answer them in turn and in kind. Sometimes they get pretty complicated. Once in a while we have to look things up. But we will be glad to try to get back to all of you with that. And so we want to maintain a dialogue. It's not a blog, it's a dialogue. And we'll answer the questions, but we have hundreds of questions that we answer every year, probably thousands. So it becomes a problem, but those will be cataloged and answered in due course. Pardon me. Ed?
Hi, Richard. So I've been kind of trying to read the chat and read the Q&A. So I've been going back and forth trying to get some of this done. So they want me to talk a little bit about, what are we doing going forward and what to expect. Obviously we all understand politics, and we know that what has happened at the federal level with a new president, and the anti-gunners now control the presidency and Congress, both chambers. We also have been living under the same rule of law, rule here in Illinois, with a governor, Second Amendment governor, and the General Assembly. Notice I'm not saying Democrats. I'm doing that on purpose. We have many Democrat friends in the General Assembly, and obviously we're going to focus on Illinois, as that's where we are trying to do the most good. But when I did the Concealed Carry Act, I worked on that with Brandon Phelps, former legislator, now retired, good Second Amendment friend. And so I want us to kind of veer away from, listing all Democrats as against us. They're not. Majority are, don't get me wrong. We all know what's going on here. So we've had a lot of questions about what's going on with renewals. And obviously we've had, horror cases of close to a year of not getting your renewals, people not being able to go buy ammo or guns because, you have dealers that are a little skittish about looking at a piece of paper that says you're valid when your card says you're not valid, and what happens with the new incoming Biden administration on those things. So there's a lot in progress that we're trying to kind of work through. ISP, believe it or not, has come to the realization, or has at least reached out to us to try and make things better. They have failed colossally. We know this. There's no other way to put it. We all know that they've swept funds. So there's the answer of they don't have the money isn't that. They swept close to $30 million out of the funds, our fees, if you will. So the three of us, Richard, Bill, and I met with the Director Kelly, actually on New Year's Eve down in Springfield. His discussion was, listen, I need to get out from under some bureaucratic problems, delays within the FOID system that are causing me to spend too much time and energy in the renewal process. And so he said, I'm going to be introducing legislation to give us, by emergency rule, the ability to kind of take away some of the bureaucracy. And by doing that, it'll get renewals much quicker, and it will free up resources to throw at what we believe is a denial of a constitutional right through the FOID system. We can discuss whether we believe the FOID is legal or not, but it's the law of the land. And so what we said was, we're happy to work with you. Devil's in the details, but we're happy to work with you to make sure people's constitutional rights are able to be received, because so far people are having such a tough time getting their initial FOID card. And so that's what the director has said is, I want to free up resources so I can focus on initial applications. And so that's what he said to us. There was in lame duck a bill that was put out there to do just that. We supported the bill mainly because, well, let me rephrase that. As I said, the devil's in the details. The initial bill we did not support, but they allowed us, and many of you would know the name Todd Vandermine, from former NRA lobbyist. He and I worked on some language that we all thought was agreeable. And so that bill came up, but never was voted on in the lame duck session. This would, in essence, give the state police the ability to go for multiple bites at the apple to get emergency rules during a pandemic. the idea, and this is very important, is we have a Illinois State Police Director that believes by using emergency rules, he ultimately wants to say, if you've gone through the process of buying a gun and you go through a background check, why wouldn't you automatically renew? That's the whole intent, is to make sure that you're qualified through background checks. Well, we go through a background check every day, call it 360 days a year at least. Through mental health background checks, there's a million different sources that ISP is tagging to see whether we have, a legal right to have a firearm, or is the legal aspect. So that's his intent. His intent is to do automatic renewals. There is some work to be done to get there, but that ultimately is what he wants to do. And in the process, freeing up resources to tackle the new applications, which obviously we all know is an absolute denial of a right if they're not doing it in 30 days. So that's where we're at on that issue. And I know I've been going back and forth between the chat and the Q&A, and a lot of questions on that. And we know it's a disaster. I purchased a firearm early in the pandemic, and it took forever even to get the check done. And so we hear you, we understand. We filed lawsuits on this very issue, so we will stay on top of it. Beyond that, I mean, going forward, Senate Bill 1966, the fingerprinting bill, is not going to go away. We know this. And so we will stay vigilant. We were able to stop this on the ground in the Senate because we had 10, folks in the Senate and mainly Democrats that, the Senate Republicans were all off. And so we didn't worry about that. But we were able to pull 10 Senate Democrats off the bill, and we hope to continue that. Potentially, there are some alternatives to this to try and bring funding on those, to help with the process. So we will be watching for that. We have a system in place to track all these bills. Bill Potts runs this system. So when a bill is filed, we have certain keywords that are tagged that will pop that bill, and we'll know about it the second it's filed, we know about it. And so we were really going to keep that up to date, and we'll keep that on the website so for you guys to be looking at. We have the Dealer Act. Obviously, we didn't like the act. We didn't support it. None of you support it. But we have to make sure that it is administered properly. And if there's any problems, we have to point that out. So those are kind of the three main issues that I would say going forward, we're going to, at a higher level, 1,000-foot level, we're going to keep an eye on. But, there was a question there about the police reform bill, or whatever you want to call it, and horrible piece of legislation. One of the questions was, we had thousands and thousands of witness slips, and then they were dumped. Well, this happens all the time, and it especially happens more towards the end of session. I mean, you will see a bill start out as, one thing, and then it turns into another. And so it could be a dog catcher bill, and then it turns into, take all semi-automatic firearms away from you bill. I mean, it really is the things that us on the ground have to watch diligently. Witness slips, we will not overburden you with asking you to fill out witness slips. We're on the ground. We know when something is real and when something is not real. We know if it's going to be changed, and therefore, they dump the witness slips, and then we got to start over again. And so we're not going to be the little boy that cried wolf. We're going to make sure that we value your time. We all have our lives that we got to work on and keep up with. And so we don't want to overburden you with that. And so we will definitely let you know if you get an alert and it says the time is now, we know the time is now. So that's when we'll need not just putting in these witness slips, but calling your legislators. And we might even point out 4 or 5 key legislators that could be swing votes. And then we'll be working with our partners at Second Amendment Foundation and SSF, the dealers and NRA. There's another question. What's happening in New York and Texas in regard to NRA do to impact us? I can tell you to some regard, I feel that NRA is kind of pushed Illinois to the back burner a little bit. They got a wonderful lobbyist who, we work with when he's down here, but instead of one lobbyist for Illinois, you have a lobbyist that now has 3 or 4 states. And so that's disappointing, but it's understandable. This isn't a hit to NRA by any means. But how does their transition affect us? It really doesn't. We do our own thing. We will work with anybody that wants to work with us to, fight the anti-gunners. That's what we're all about. We're here to protect your Second Amendment rights. So beyond that, I don't see what NRA's change does, other than I think it's a positive thing. I don't know why anybody would be, I don't know why anybody would want to be in New York for anything, but, and I apologize to anybody from New York, but I was just researching today. My son has a baseball tournament, 12U baseball tournament in Cooperstown. And, I carry, well, I can't carry in New York. So I've been researching the laws, and I don't know that I even want to drive with my weapon, my firearm in New York. So I think it's a positive thing going to Texas. Best things are in Texas. So with that, that's about all I had. Richard?
Okay. Going forward here, we have, of course, we'll be on top of everything, and we'll be down at the legislature whenever they're there. But there's a lot of work to be done before and after, on weekends, at nights, all kinds of things that we constantly are doing. And so we do have coming up in April. You'll get the notice in about 3 weeks. We have iGold coming up. So that becomes a important demonstration of your support of your Second Amendment rights. iGold has always been a great and peaceful place. We're spirited, we're rally, but we're well behaved, and that goes a long way with the legislators. So I wanted to let you know that. The other thing I wanted to bring up is in the 101st General Assembly, there were 12,557 bills and resolutions that were introduced. Now, certainly all those didn't make it, but all those have to be looked at and watched. And one of the things that Ed was talking about was one bill starts out as one thing and turns into another. And so that's why we put monitor on these bills. Until we see some movement on the bill, we won't put down support or oppose. But we've seen bills turn 180 degrees. I actually witnessed one day I was there, bills turned around from support to not support 5 times in one day with amendments that have been added. A number of amendments is something that we also have to watch. We're probably 20 to 30,000 amendments in the state legislature every session. And so we're watching those too. So by the time you get the 12,000 plus bills and resolutions and 20,000 amendments, maybe, or more, it keeps us pretty busy down there. The other thing I want to talk to you about is the rulemaking process. When we pass a bill, rules can be promulgated by whatever agency is assigned to promulgate them. Those have to be watched very, very carefully. They they can actually turn the meaning of a bill around. So we're also watching all the rulemaking that's going on and trying to keep up with that. Sometimes there's a comment period on rulemaking, and we'll ask you to chime in on those comments from time to time, and we'll tell you how to do that. So that is one of the things that we need to do, and we do. I don't know how the session is going to go. We just got word a few minutes ago that the Senate had canceled session for next week. So this is really a hit and miss year. It's really hard to contact legislators. I'm really opposed to remote legislation because you can't get to your legislature. We can't get to your legislator. It becomes very, very difficult to talk to these people about the issues. And so that is all going to be out there. And that's another thing that we're going to keep working on. And so we'll be doing that. I'd like to turn it back to Glenn now and talk about the organization and how important it is to be a member, because we can't do this without membership dues. There are some people who say that, well, you'll do it anyway. Well, you can only live off other people's money so long that you have to have more of it. It takes a lot of money and a lot of effort on our parts. The Illinois State Rifle Association has 5 lobbyists, more than any other state association, but that's because we're in Illinois. We do probably a better job than any other state association, in my opinion, and because we have to. So we want everyone's support, and so joining the Illinois State Rifle Association, getting your friends to join the Illinois State Rifle Association is very, very important to us. The broader our base, the more strength we have, the more we can do. Glenn, would you like to finish up?
Yeah, sure. I think we're doing a very good job staying on time. We know that everybody's busy and we appreciate you taking the time. The response to this 317 people is remarkable and just shows how robust ISRA is and how engaged the citizens of Illinois are. Just to capitalize on what Richard said, money certainly is important. None of the great work that ISRA does and will continue to do can be accomplished without money. So if you are in a position to contribute, not only do I know they would appreciate their funds, but in working with them for more than 2.5 decades, first with the National Rifle Association, now with the Second Amendment Foundation, I know that they'll put that money to good use and be good stewards of that money. But in addition to money, what's equally valuable is your time. I've spoken for many, many decades on the importance of grassroots activism and what it truly means. And I believe it's two sides of one coin. One is the education component, which we took a really big step tonight to talking about the different lawsuits that ISRA is involved with, and of more significance, the legislation where you can have an impact that's pending and will be pending in the state capitol. So in addition to your financial resources, we're really looking for your time, whether it's attending iGold or enrolling in the Second Amendment Foundation's 2A First Responder Program. Our strength is in our numbers. And I can tell you one thing, we may not always win when our constituents are fully engaged, but we will never win if they are not. So engagement, whether that means writing letters to the editor, spread the word about your Second Amendment rights and why they're important to you. Contacting your individual lawmakers, your senators, your representative who represent you directly, and then also committee members of relevant committees that hear bills. I'm sure Ed will agree, it's a lot easier to defeat a bill in the committee and not even let a bad bill get to the floor than it is once it gets to the floor. And conversely, the only way we can pass good reform legislation is by getting it through the committee process. So committee engagement is very, very important. So don't just take the information you heard tonight and file it away as interesting. Take it and use it now to reach out to your lawmakers, to make your views known, to be a force multiplier by sharing it with people who should have been on this call tonight, but for whatever reason couldn't make it, because the larger our voice and the more unified we are, the better position we are in to protect and defend the Second Amendment, which is what unites us all. Richard, I'll just let you know, I'm sure you haven't been scrolling through the chats and the questions to the degree that Ed and I have, but we're getting a lot of good feedback on this call. I think the consensus is that the attendees hope that this isn't the last one, but only the first of many. I don't have much more to say. I'll turn it back over to Richard, but just publicly in front of everybody, I want to thank the ISRA for all the work they do on behalf of the Second Amendment, and especially for including me tonight to help organize and moderate this session, which I think was a very successful start for your inaugural Zoom meeting. Richard, is there anything else you'd like to say before we end the meeting and let people get back with their evenings?
Well, we're bumping right up against our time limit, but I want to tell everyone how much we appreciate their support, their being members and being engaged in this first of our Zoom webinars. And you can expect another one or two during the legislative session and maybe beyond that. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and attending and being part of this. And we'll be talking to you soon, and you look for mail from us, alerts from us. We Twitter alerts, Facebook alerts, everything. We do everything that we can do to get the word out. And we thank all of you for your participation.
Thank you again, all for your time. I'm sure we'll do this again. Stay engaged, stay educated, stay in the fight, and have a good evening. We appreciate your support.